Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
The Fox 17 Rock Interview is thrilled to bring you three-time Grammy Award-winning guitarist, producer, singer-songwriter, Steve Vai. Steve, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me, brother.
You know, it's hard to believe you've been going for over 40 years with this incredible career of yours, and this is the 13th studio album, Inviolate, and it's like you're kind of evolving or reinventing yourself, Steve.
Well, you know, it's the kind of thing where I'm really fortunate because all through life, I never really considered anything else. You know, I always just liked chasing fun ideas. And I've done that my whole career. And although there's perhaps 13 conventional type studio records, there's many, many records of different types that I've released. And I really enjoy doing that. And with Inviolate, you know, it's the kind of thing where the older you get, your perspectives change. And one of my perspectives that's changed, and I don't think this is uncommon for a lot of artistic people, you know, musicians and stuff like that. You feel more free. You know, you feel more free to chase those compelling ideas that really resonate with you, and you don't have to give them any excuses. You don't have to say, well, this isn't going to make me famous in the future. Mm-hmm. You know, people aren't going to know how great I am with it, you know, or I'm going to fail at this, or all of that kind of dissolves. And you're left with this beautiful sense of freedom in your creative endeavors. So that's how, you know, with Inviolate, I just was kind of like, I don't need to be more famous. I don't need to, you know, be richer or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So that creates an opening to really just ask yourself, what do I really want to do here? And that's pretty much how I built the record.
Yeah, but I think it's so interesting to see the evolution of your career, you know, from, you know, starting out as a young teenager, from seeing a young boy play to knowing that you're going to be doing that eventually, and then going from Frank Zappa, you know, Alcatraz, you know, Whitesnake, you know, all these things that you did, David Lee Roth, and then how it evolved, because so many people only know you now as Steve Vai, the solo artist.
Yeah, that's kind of nice because I really enjoyed those big rock bands, mm-hmm. you know, but I knew that it was fleeting, and I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do the rest of my life, which was obvious when Passion and Warfare came out. And you know, it's interesting, Eric, because everything was kind of handed to me very easily, you know. Frank asked me to be in the band. You know, Alcatraz asked me to be in the band. Dave Roth asked me. Whitesnake asked me. So these were like gimmies. You know what I mean? It wasn't until Passion and Warfare, really, where, you know, the audience obviously split a bit because that record was a lot more compositional, a little more eccentric and quirky. Right. And, you know, progressive, whatever you want to call it. It wasn't the rock and roll I was doing with Whitesnake and Roth. I love that stuff. And there's elements of that for sure, because I'm a rocker, you know. But when Passion and Warfare came out and actually had some success, I felt like the training wheels were off.
Speaking of Passion and Warfare, I feel like that really, you know, brought out your solo career too, Steve, because when that came out, you were everywhere on the guitar magazines and just, you know, in the whole guitar realm.
Yeah, it really was a blessing. It was one of those moments that an artist really can dream of, you know what I mean? Where it was the perfect time. There was so much of a momentum of promotion with all the big rock band stuff and Crossroads and all this stuff. And so when Passion and Warfare came out, there was definitely a lot of eyes on it in the guitar community. And I was fortunate. I was fortunate that the record had enough of a uniqueness and it had enough quality in it that it was accepted by a particular audience. And they became my audience for my whole career, and they just rock.
You know, speaking of which, I can't help but when I see Ralph Macchio now, you know, in Cobra Kai, I always think of you and the Crossroads scene with the dueling guitars. And, you know, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Steve, did you play both guitar parts in that scene?
I played everything except the slide guitar. That was right.
Okay. How incredible is that when you look back on that, you know, when that came out and, you know, it's like you were in this movie and you've been in multiple movies over the years.
Well, it was a shocker because you can have a hit record, but being in a hit film is different. You know, your whole, what I noticed back then, because that was a kind of a hit movie and I played a striking character.
Yes.
So it was remembered. You know, if you saw that movie, you'd say, oh yeah, Ralph Macchio, the story's kind of cool. And then there was that guy, you know, the devil's guitar player. So when people watch that, then all of a sudden you go in the street and it's like, there's Jack Butler, you know, it was weird. And that went on for years, you know. But you don't know these things when you're doing them. It was sort of like the birth of the Jem guitar 35 years ago. It was so innocent, you know. It was like, what do I want in a guitar for me? You know, I don't know what anybody else really wants, and I'm not going to try to guess. You know, what do I want? And I just very innocently built this guitar that became like the best-selling signature guitar in history. You know, and a little disclaimer here: some people believe the Les Paul is, but that's actually not a signature guitar. But I'm not taking anything away from Les Paul.
Right.
I think it's nice to have a successful signature series guitar that runs for 35 years. It's unprecedented. And I'm so happy about that. But it happened so innocently, you know?
Well, you know, and also, Steve, with the Jem, the whole Jem series, as you launched it out into the universe with the 7-string, and as you kept adding to it and changing it and making it, you know, your tool, it's just fun to see how it comes from the original one, which I remember in bright yellow with the disappearing pyramids, and it had, you know, the monkey grip on the handle. It's just all these things that no other guitar had, and then you still keep changing them up and making them to suit you for what you're playing at that time.
Yeah, it's nice. Any guitarist can do that. That's what I did in the very beginning before Ibanez. I designed a guitar that I knew would have all the things that I liked, and you couldn't buy it. Nobody was making them, you know.
Yeah.
And I had like 4 of those made because I was going out with Roth and I needed guitars, you know. And then guitar companies became interested in what I was playing and offered all sorts of deals. And, you know, for me, I just wanted somebody to be able to make that guitar really well. And all the guitars I got from these companies, because I sent them the specs, I got back their guitar with my name on it. You know,
oh, geez.
That's what like a signature guitar is usually. If somebody will take like a Les Paul and change the pickups and change the frets and that's fine. That's nice because then you know what a particular artist plays. But sometimes, like in the case with the Jem, they're more unique.
Right.
You know, they're not really things that you'll find in the marketplace, and that happens all the time. But it's not very often that they grow legs and run for 35 years.
You had a surgery on your shoulder, and you released this video that is just mind-boggling, Knapsack, with you playing only with one hand and literally the other one in a sling under the guitar. How did you do that? And I mean, that thing's already, you know, over 1.5 million views. I
had gotten the surgery, and when I got back, I was wearing this sling. And the sling was designed by the doctor that did the surgery, Dr. Knapp. So he named it the knapsack. You know, he named it the knapsack. So I got back from the hospital and I couldn't move my arm was just, you know, and I had just received a new black Onyx Pia. This is the white one. And I just, you know, if you have a legato type of hammering style like me, it's not so difficult to play with one hand.
Wow.
You're just pulling off and, you know, but you got to make melody, you know, it's got to have some, well, that, you know, when I wrote that song, so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm going to write a song with one hand. I can do this. Of course I can, you know? And so then the next thing I thought was, okay, it's got to be an enjoyable song. You know, it can't just be a gimmick.
Right.
So I had to have a good melody, and I just sat and did it. And yeah, it's fascinating when you see it.
So besides, a new album, incredible videos that have all these followers and all these views, in 2014, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the first rock guitarist to appear on Chinese television.
That's what they tell me. I was there. I was playing the, what was it called? The Spring Summit in China. And it was this amazing event. There was 2.5 billion people watching. And I came out with this small orchestra on this stage on a cloud. You got to see it. It's unbelievable. And I performed For the Love of God with the orchestra. And it was really fantastic. But it was the first time they had ever had rock music on Chinese television. That was a second for me in China. The first was, they tell me, that I was the first American rock artist to play in communist China. It was in the 90s.
Oh.
I was trying to get in. I was trying to get in because I love going to these places that no one would go.
Right.
I'm told I was the first artist to perform, American artist to perform in Siberia. And I've played various places multiple times in Siberia. And
amazing.
It was great.
One of the 10 greatest guitarists of all times by Guitar World. It's like going, how do you feel about that? Being in that list with so many, of your peers and everything, being held to that high esteem, Steve?
I think, well, that was easy. No, it's always nice to be recognized for your contribution. And it's a stunner for me. Through my whole career, it's taken a little bit of getting used to, because really, I just put my head down and chase things that are exciting and interesting to me. I get like feverish, like, oh my God, I love that idea. I got to do it. And everything that happens, as sometimes those things don't work at all. Like nobody recognizes them. But I've noticed in the past, those things that are really exciting to me that I accomplished effectively, other people respond.
Mm-hmm.
Not, of course, it's a small sliver of the music listening community, but it's enough for me to make a living. And it's enough for me to marvel, over it all. Now, the funny thing that you recognize when you're going through it is you're the same person. Do you know what I mean? So if you start out and you have insecurities or you have fears or fantasies about being successful in the future, and that your happiness is dependent on being successful in the future, you're setting yourself up for real suffering because you take who you are with you, and it's never enough for the ego, because that's what I noticed as I'm reading, I'm getting appearing on the cover of magazines, I'm winning awards. I'm like, really? I feel like the same guy, and I don't know how this is happening, and then the ego comes in the back door after 20 years of it, people telling you you're great and you all this stuff. And that's a challenge too, because there's always, you're never on top for long, you know what I mean? And when you start, because everything ebb and flows like this, everything goes like this. So if you take all that stuff too seriously, it has a tendency to get in the way of the one thing that got you there, which was your creative joy, your freedom, your creative freedom. It becomes compromised with success sometimes, because you start to feel like you need to placate an audience. Like winning a Grammy is so great, but then you start chasing that. And it compromises your creativity. You forgot that winning the Grammy in the first place wasn't something you tried to do. It happened.
Right.
Because of something that flowed into the music you were working on. So really the message that I discovered is just chase those things that excite you, and don't make any excuses, because they're all.
Well, with the new album out, the 13th studio album, Inviolate, obviously, came out January 28th. Also, it's going to come out as an LP, I believe, March 18th, right?
Yeah. That package is very nice.
How incredible. Well, I want to make sure too, Steve, that our viewers know where to go for, obviously you do a lot on social media and on your website. Where can they go for all things Steve Vai to keep up with you and to look at when your tour is coming to their city?
Well, you know, I have this unbelievable social media team, Stephen and Stephanie Bradley and Jerome in Holland. So you can go to vi.com, or you can, I guess, sign up to my Instagram, because we're always, any of my socials will tell you what's going on in Viland if you're interested.
Well, and hopefully maybe there'll be a new book coming out too, like your last Videology. You know, it wouldn't be bad to have, you know, more books coming as well in your spare time, Steve.
Thank you. I've been working on it. Actually, what I did was, I loved the whole educational thing, and I created a Patreon. So Patreon is like my dumping ground for all of that stuff, all the educational stuff. There's big, long videos. I mean, if you're a guitar player, it's a great place to hang. If you want to learn how to record, if you want to know what delay is, you know, you want to know how to mic a cabinet, if you want to hear funny stories from my career, if you want to see cool kind of techniques and things like that, that's all there on Patreon.
I'll tell you what, you got a lot going. I got to tell you, Steve Vai, thank you so much for coming on the Rockin' Review.
Thank you, Eric, and good luck, brother.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones show.